Hey everyone, welcome back. It's the end of 2023. We've had a great year. I've really enjoyed starting this podcast with the guys, and we're gonna end the year awesome. It is December 13th, so as my daughter says, it's Taylor Swift's birthday. So there you go, a little trivia. So to my daughter and all the Swifties out there, it's like a holy day. But no. So it's the last episode. This will come out around Christmas, maybe right after Christmas. And we wanted to talk about how software gets developed, like all the different ways that help us create software. Not really the coding, not really the IDEs. We may touch on those, but really what are those things that we use on a daily basis in terms of individual development and team development. So the one big thing that came out this year, and I don't think anyone has not been impacted by all the new AI tools and the AI kind of jargon, because I think half of it's jargon. But who wants to kick off and talk about like how AI has impacted your job and your career?
You know, I think since Martin is technically half robot, I think he should go first. Because he probably relates the most to this new AI trend, I think.
Beep, beep, boop, beep, beep. I'll just do the entire podcast like that. No, I think many of us have been dabbling with AI this year. I think some of us will have adopted AI this year. I know that I'm one of the dabblers still. I see value, but I also see a lot of things where humans and deterministic software can do better. But it's cool seeing that AI assistants are popping up everywhere, forgetting all of the impact on environment and everything around those things and training data and all of that. I do think there's value in exploring what is going on with AI assistants. And I know that a lot of people who are using Copilot or the new JetBrains AI assistant or any of the other ones are really into code generation with the AI. And I think AI is definitely a good help there to do some boilerplate or maybe give suggestions and maybe have a kind of a sparring partner on when you are developing your codes. But I do think, and I have actually seen in the JetBrains AI assistant and Copilot, for example, that there's a lot of interesting things there that are happening that go beyond just code generation. So one of the things that I saw there is, for example, generating a commit message or even making a summary of like the last 5 commits into the repository, like what happened, who did something, and so on. And you actually get a really nice summary of all of the changes that have gone out, and it works surprisingly well. So I'm really amazed by that, and that is super helpful. Like if you come back from vacation or whatever, to see what the team has been up to. So I'm wondering if you guys have seen anything that is interesting and maybe goes beyond just the code generation that we are starting to see based on AI assistants.
Yeah, I mean, I guess interesting. I do think like code reviews are super helpful from AI assistants. Like just look over and potentially find issues that you may have missed. Because let's face it, like the hard bugs are hard for a reason, but we also all make a lot of silly mistakes every once in a while. So in terms of training data and seeing that out in a large set of code bases, you're likely to see some of these common mistakes pop up over and over again. That said, is a large language model the right tool to kind of surface these problems? Because again, like full disclosure, Martin and I work at JetBrains, and we have deterministic tools and analyzers that can find these things without needing to like call a service. It all kind of happens locally. So yeah, I mean, like I think that could be helpful. but I think I'm a dabbler too, Martin. Right now, it's like there are some values, but I think a lot of my muscle memory is still go to Google, type a bunch of fragmented keywords, find a human solution, and then like adapt it back into my code base.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are saying like AI assistants are like the beginning of the end for sites like Stack Overflow, because it kind of cuts out that additional step of like needing to open the browser and crafting a search. But I don't know. I think people are getting a little ahead of themselves. I still like human answers,
Yeah.
but that's just me.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm like you guys. I am a dabbler, and I kind of use these AI assistants in a paired programming type of logic. So
Mhm.
I don't ever take any suggestions that any of the AI assistants give me.
Mhm.
I look at them and I view them kind of like I would do if I was paired programming with someone. I mean, they're looking at my code, I'm going to look at their code. We're going to find some happy medium and get to a solution. But I also like going back to like blogs and looking at blogs because
Mhm.
it gives me context. See, that's what I really like, context with the code. And
Mhm.
that's why I like reading books and reading technical documentation and stuff, because if you just put up some code, sometimes it doesn't really explain why. So it's nice to have that context and the reason why someone did something
Mhm.
a certain way.
Yeah, it's funny you say why, because Martin and I had this conversation, I think like months ago. There is a feature in AI assistants, specifically in JetBrains AI assistant, where it can kind of summarize your work and write a commit message. And I think it's really good at telling you what is happening, but it obviously doesn't know why you wrote this code, right? So the context sometimes
Uh,
gets lost in code generation. And um yeah, like the human element, I think you kind of hit it, is like still really really important. And I think that's why a lot of these things are called co-pilot and assistant. They come secondary to you, the developer. It's empowering you, but it's not replacing you, right?
Yeah. And I still think we haven't really leveraged a few things that Microsoft has brought out in .NET and C Sharp, like source generators. Like, we should probably leverage that a little bit more than the AI. So I don't really want to get lazy. So I think also AI may allow for a more lazy developer, and you have to stay disciplined, because that code that you're getting from the AI, I mean, just like anything coming out of a LLM, it's just guesses. It's trying to predict what you want,
Mhm.
and sometimes it doesn't predict well, and you get really funky suggestion. So
but
don't ever
yeah,
take like anything for face value.
that is an interesting observation, because if I look back at when tools like JetBrains ReSharper came about, or when CodeRush came about, or Microsoft started to ship Roslyn analyzers and so on, I know a lot of people also got upset and were saying, "Look, I don't want to become a lazy developer, just like you said with AI." And we've all come to accept that there are analyzers in our codes looking at what we are doing, giving suggestions, and so on. And they are deterministic, but we kind of have grown as a community to like the value that those things bring us, and can actually improve our code. So I'm curious to see if the same thing is going to happen with AI, where we're now saying, I don't need this magic, but maybe 5 years from now, we're all bought into it and bought into the idea of having this assistant in everything we do.
Yeah. It's funny because I was telling someone the other day, like, I remember when syntax highlighting was new to programming, and people are like, this is going to make people super lazy. There's all these colors. So, yeah, I think there is constantly that swing of like, oh, I don't need this. I've been programming for X amount of years and I've never needed this. And, it's like, it's a quality of life improvement. And whether you use it or not, it's really dependent on you, right? Like there's a bunch of people who still like Emacs and Vim and stuff out there. That's fine. Those tools are great.
It's because they can't quit.
They can't. But yeah, I do wonder what it's going to be like. To your point, Chris, like in terms of hallucinations or potentially like bad result sets, you can kind of go look at the ChatGPT announcements and stuff like that. When we're dealing with training data and the training data that companies like OpenAI or Amazon or Google with their Gemini stuff, there's always a cutoff date for the training data. And to gather that up much information, especially all of human knowledge, to gather it into a data set that you can train a model with, there always has to be a cutoff date. I think with ChatGPT 3, it's like 2020 or something like that. With ChatGPT 4, it might be 2022.
Yeah.
But, with .NET 8 just releasing and C# 12 features, there's still a knowledge gap between what the AI assistant can tell you and what you probably know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just a fact of the technology now.
So I'll give an
Although I
example.
think it's
go ahead,
sorry.
Martin.
I do think that's a really interesting one because none of the models will be able to answer like how do I use primary constructors in C# 12 and those things. But most models currently do support things like embeddings or calling into external APIs and so on. And I think it's just a matter of time before the models that are integrated in the variety of tools that we all use are going to be calling into whatever is in the IDE already. Yeah. So if, for example, you say, okay, write me this class, and the IDE says, okay, this code base is C# 12, maybe the IDE could take the response that comes back from the model and is using, let's say, C# 10 and convert the style of the code into the latest and greatest, and you won't even notice that that cutoff is there for that particular scenario.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that I'll give a plug for ReSharper and Brighter right now. It did suggest, the analyzers did suggest primary constructors. Last week I opened up a web API project and got some hints and said you should use a primary constructor here. And yeah, lo and behold, it worked, and I love primary constructors. But I was going to say one thing. So not writing code, but just writing, I'm awful with grammar. And so I use Grammarly. I'll pay the $50 a quarter or whatever it is because it helps me write better. Now, is that AI? Yeah, it's AI because it's giving me suggestions, but it's weird. Like if I take a look, I don't make as many mistakes as I used to. So it's actually training. We train the AI, but it also trains us in some ways to write better code, write better just blog posts and whatever we're just writing. So remember that all these suggestions that you get are probably going to make you a better developer in most ways.
Yeah. Funny anecdote. I also use Grammarly, and it still cannot deal with .NET, and it drives me mad. So
there's no exception. Even if you say .NET is a word,
Yeah,
it still comes back and sees that period, and
it's like, why are you ending the sentence at the
yeah,
beginning of the sentence? Yeah, it drives me nuts. So drop the
So
dot.
is this where we do a call out for drop the dot?
Yeah.
drop the dot. But
So not sure if everyone who is listening knows about this, but Khalid had this meme, half serious, half not serious approach of dropping the dot in .NET. So removing the points that is before the words, just to show that we've gone from old traditional .NET framework into this new era that is .NET Core and beyond. So we have been talking about dropping the dot, and that would be a cool thing.
Look, it's gonna happen. It's not the future. It's now. It's just a matter of time. I'm gonna bend the universe to this.
someone at Microsoft in the marketing department will make it happen, because they'll need to do something to justify their jobs.
Yeah.
So
I know what we need to do. We have to put out a lot of blog posts on the internet saying that the dot has dropped and it's gone now and it's .NET without that point before the words. And AI will train on that, and magically our problems will be solved in the future.
If you use the .NET CLR, then it is .NET all spelled out. So yeah.
Well, let's save drop the dot for a future episode. We
For
can
2024.
we can
yeah.
Well, I'll argue for dropping it, and then you folks can argue for keeping it, and then folks can make up their mind. But
yeah.
you know,
so the one thing.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that I do love about AI is I've seen these where Teams and Zoom listen to an entire meeting and will take notes for you and basically condense everything that was said in the meeting down to kind of what it thinks are the highlights and everything. And it's amazing. Like it will even know different voices. So it even knows like who's talking and stuff like that. I remember a tech ed where they did some demos years ago for some Azure speech features where it could basically transcript everything out and transcript and say who said what. And so I like, now is that AI? Yeah, I think that's AI also. It's not this LLM, but what we have to remember, AI is, there's lots of different AIs, like genetic algorithms, expert systems. So when people say AI, yeah, most of the time today we're thinking large language models, but remember, AI, there's a whole umbrella of different AI technologies that I think we will leverage more and more in the future.
Yeah, I think for me, we have some show notes here, but I had put, AI has kind of become a marketing catch-all term. As of right now, there's no actual thing that is artificial intelligence. Like all these give the illusion of intelligence, but there's no real reasoning or logic behind these models. And so right now, AI is being used as a catch-all term for things like large language models, auto completion, generative AI when it comes to like images, video, text, object and sound recognition, like computer vision is something that also classified under AI, recommendation engines and natural language processing, just to name a few things that kind of fit under this umbrella. But I'd be remiss for us to kind of leave this section though without actually talking about the training data and potentially like the ethics of how we built these technologies, because these technologies are pretty amazing in terms of their technical feat, but they're also kind of bordering on like IP theft and potentially plagiarism, right? I just saw in the news a sports blog got caught for plagiarizing because the AI assistant they were using had essentially generated the same paragraph from another post out there,
Mhm.
right? So like how do you folks feel about like how these models were built?
It's a very thin line, I would say. There's a couple of other aspects there as well, but just to touch on the intellectual property and everything, um, that's a tough one, and I'm not sure which way I lean. In a way, us as humans, if we read text on the internet and so on, that is also going to influence us in some way at some point. Like you read a blog, you learn something, you are going to use that in future conversations or future writings that you make. Then again, is it okay for a big tech company to hoover up all of that data, build a product, and then ask money for all of that? But also, back to the other side, there are consultants reading blog posts that people put out for free, learning from that, and also selling their skills. So I'm always leaning towards one end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum because I see both sides there. The thing that I do think is kind of disturbing. I'm not sure if you read about this when the articles came out about OpenAI, for example, where they would hire people on the cheap in countries like Nigeria and India and so on to review what was going on and actually make the training better and the model better. That is a good thing for the model, of course, and that's a good thing for the company behind the model. But then again, should we be subjecting people in low-cost areas of the world to filtering out all of the filth that is in the training data?
Yeah, and I was about ready to say that. I remember some chatbots that this was either right before the pandemic or during the pandemic when Google and Microsoft and Facebook would release these chatbots that would learn over time based on the conversations that they would have. And they had to turn them off because most of them became racist
Yeah.
and very, very bigoted because of probably Yahoos they're feeding in like bad content into them. So, and that's why I was gonna bring up all AI. If you, it takes the whatever biases that the data aligns with. It's only what you have to remember is all these AIs are only as good as the data that you're pumping into it. So if you have biased data pumping into it, you're going to get biased results that you may not like, and it may come out in a totally different way that you never anticipated. So
Yeah.
that's the only kind of thing that from an ethics standpoint, yes, the IP they should only use IP that they've licensed or is freely available. But on the other side, they have to take responsibility of any results, good or bad, that come out of it based on those models.
Yeah. But I guess to your point, and then we can kind of move on to a different topic. But like, if the models are only as good as the data that goes into them, then the data is so valuable that those folks producing the initial training data set should get some kind of compensation,
They should.
or at least get some kind of buy-in. Right now, these models don't really tell you the source of their generated content. And I think, to me, that's still, especially when it comes to art styles and generative AI and images, I think that's the one that makes me feel the ickiest. Like, I don't think I would ever use those things, because for me, people train their entire lives to kind of create these art styles, and for someone to just kind of steal their essence,
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. So,
Well, and on the sound
interesting.
side of voices, there's AI generators that will say, hey, in the voice of Chris Woodruff, read this like chapter
Wait,
of a
are you
book.
saying you are an AI?
No,
We're gonna replace Chris
Katie.
for the next
Can we
episode.
speak robot among each other?
Yeah, but no, I mean there are AIs that will basically generate content that sounds like a celebrity is talking about them. So is that IP theft?
Well, I have a couple stories about that. Bruce Willis is going through, um, I guess, aphasia or
Yeah,
some sort of dementia. It's really sad. I
yeah,
love Bruce Willis. It's sad to hear it, but I guess before his turn, he ended up selling his likeness and his voice to essentially a production company. So in the future, you might see Bruce Willis movies that don't have him in it. Additionally, Mark Hamill, for his reprisal in The Mandalorian, he wasn't in The Mandalorian. That was an AI generated deepfake, and his voice was also generated in The
exactly.
Mandalorian.
But was he given
Yeah,
money for? I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure he was given like money for
mhm,
that use.
yeah,
But I'm talking about like people discovering, hey, there's this like YouTube video with someone that sounds like me talking about some horrible
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And
I mean, that is happening. So, kids are the worst. I'll just say that. It's like a hot take. Sorry, Martin. I know you have a kid, but kids are the worst.
He's the worst. I love him though, but
No, but kids are using deepfake technology to bully their classmates and create deepfakes and stuff like that. So there is
Mhm.
a dark side to a lot of this generative stuff. I know this podcast seemed to have taken a turn into the
Yeah,
dark here, but
yeah.
let,
But
let's move on.
steer, let's kind of
actually no.
change the
There,
course of the boat. So
there's
so
actually one more thought I want to give
okay.
in this entire AI discussion, and that is the around the training data. And it's a worry that I have. Um, right now, AI is all, or the LLMs are all trained on data that comes from the internet. And as we all know, people are currently using AI to write stuff on the internet. So at some point, the new training data is going to be written by AI. So
Mhm.
that brings me to two questions. First of all, is that going to change the dynamics of the entire intellectual property discussion? Because the data and the content gets so diluted that the discussion of where does this come from is no longer really valid. But second of all, because of that, our texts and information that the AI can work with, are they all going to become kind of boring and all the same because it's all coming from the same model over and over again, and we're
Mhm.
retraining data based on that same data?
Yeah. Well, what you have to remember is AI doesn't have an imagination. Our AI technology today isn't innovative.
Mhm.
All it can do is take existing knowledge and spit out content based on that existing knowledge that was fed into its models. So I think Khalid hit it on the head. I mean, we aren't even scratching AI reaching a human intelligence. So I don't think that's going to happen for quite a while. Um, but let's move on to some other ways that we can work better in our kind of development workflows. So let's talk about, the COVID pandemic caused us to all go in our houses and be separated from people, and I think people have embraced that habit at this point. We're seeing less numbers at conferences, and sure, people are getting out of the house more, but I think in our community, I think everyone has embraced, almost to a fault, I feel, this let's just stay behind screens and talk to people. So we have all this like remote distributed development technologies that are out now.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna steer into the positive thing, and then you went straight into COVID. But
Well, no, I think it's a good thing. I think it's really good that we have the ability to communicate with people easily.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, I remember 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I was like a single consultant working at a little startup. And when I hit a problem, you know how I fixed it? I didn't have the internet because it was too expensive. I didn't have a cell phone, or if I did, it was a flip phone. I used to go down to Barnes and Noble, go into the software development book area and go, oh, let me look at this book and see if, or I would like at the end of work, I would call someone and go, hey, I'm having a problem. You want to meet for a beer or dinner? And or go to a user group meeting and chat with people after the user group meeting to about that. So
You mean actual real life people? Ugh.
I know
I
3D.
know.
I always say I still enjoy seeing people in 3D. So
Meat space and meat space. It's called meat space.
yeah.
But no, I think remote development clearly is a big part of the software development workflow future. There's just a lot of styles of remote development right now. So, most people are probably familiar with remote desktop tools like creating a virtual machine over there, logging into it from over here. SSH has been around as long as anyone can remember. So that's a big part of remote development. Virtual machines are also a big part. But I think the thing that's really been surprising about the changes, maybe currently or upcoming, is like dev containers are starting to become like I think will be a really important technology, not just for remote development, but for kind of like onboarding team members and building out teams and quickly accelerating towards solutions. So, for folks who don't know what dev containers are, it's a specification built on top of Docker, developed by Microsoft, that kind of lets you create a recipe for a development environment. And you can put that quote unquote recipe into the repository. And then anyone who pulls down a compatible editor or IDE that can see that dev container can now spin up a complete dev environment within minutes. And on top of that, if you're using a backend that's using dev containers, you can also take snapshots, so you can kind of jump instantly into
Yeah.
environments. So that's kind of great for pushing the envelope in terms of remote development and kind of giving everyone on your team that capability. But Martin, do you have any thoughts about
Yeah,
that?
I think it goes even beyond that. I know that in infrastructure world, we have been using Kubernetes and Helm and manifests and so on for many years now, infrastructure as code and that entire movement.
Mhm.
Whereas with development environments, we have all clung onto our laptop with our own set of tools, with our own whatever, and some installer files and some shared drives with tools that people on the team need. And I do think dev containers is a really good way forward because you can still customize whatever the environment looks like. But if someone new comes on the team, or you lose your laptop and you have a new laptop and you need to get quickly into coding and working on something, or the it works on my machine scenario, all of those things are now covered by the fact that you can kind of script or at least define what the environment should look like, and you get the dev environments in a reproducible way as well.
Yeah.
So it's cool technology. I have been using it on and off a little bit, but also there, just like with AI, dabbling into it mostly. But it's promising, and it's a really cool way forwards.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. I haven't done as much as probably you two have, just because I'm like, I don't, I like the resources that I have on my machine, and I only have so much RAM, and sometimes those dev environments, and you keep loading up more and more Docker images as containers and running those, and
Mm-hmm.
you start running out of memory. But I do like the idea of remoting into like up in the cloud. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have tried those type of environments where I have a cloud container and I remote into it, and I have a fast enough internet connection to where I don't really experience a lag between my screen and where the actual content is running from. So I think that could be the next. I think that's where this is going to probably go, is more of a cloud dev container that has some ability to sync. Maybe it's like if it doesn't have an internet connection, then it falls back on a local container that's synced with the cloud. But
well, the nice thing I think that's kind of developed over the last 20 years is like you kind of hinted at it. It's like it works on my machine. Like my environment is set up exactly with the database, the web server, everything I need, the correct version of my tooling. And it's nice that in the last 20 years is like all of that stuff is disposable and built on top of like the concept of the code kind of dictates my development environment. So like infrastructure as code, and dev containers kind of builds on that a little bit. But to your point, Chris, it's like you like talking to people and having meaningful conversations. I think a lot of these tools are meant to kind of like get rid of the tedium of like setting up your environment, like the stuff that maybe isn't high value when you're meeting with people. So it's nice to kind of like codify the low value things in terms of conversation, but high value in terms of team and
exactly.
So, but it kind of leads us to kind of our next future of like future changes of collaborating with people, which is like communication mechanisms. Chris, you talked about like your flip phone, right? You text people, you'd read a book and not buy it and take 25 cents away from that author. Poor author. I'm just joking.
Or I would buy it just for that one little nugget.
Martin's still getting royalty checks for his NuGet book. All 10 cents.
Everyone purchase my NuGet book. I think I've done the calculations. By 2070, I will be able to buy a beer from the royalties. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But we've in the last 10 years, we've all depended on emails, blog posts, written documentation, kind of these like asynchronous communication models. But what would you guys say is like your favorite communication mechanism of kind of the modern workflow? And do you see yourself using any of the future styles of communication? Let's say VR. So I'll throw it to you guys.
I kind of like my legs, or having legs.
Hey, the Meta Quest just added legs. Okay, so they are definitely the future at this point. So
yeah, I always find it interesting if you go back like 20, 25 years and watch all the old tech movies, like movies that had VR in them. I remember Michael Douglas, the one movie where it was kind of that reverse sexual harassment, him and Demi Moore. But the company itself was building this virtual reality knowledge where it had like an angel for a helper, and it would help you. But you take a look at what Player One,
Ready Player One, yeah.
yeah,
Ready
Ready
Player
Player
One, yeah.
One. Like, would that be cool? I think it would. I think it would be interesting to it would allow. I think it will allow you to meet more different types of people.
Yeah, like King Kong, Iron Giant, Godzilla, like
Yeah,
all
I
types of
mean,
different.
it's gonna. I'll be the pessimistic one. It's gonna add a lot of problems too, but everything, how society changes adds positive and negatives. But I think that we need to make meetings better. I know Martin is all he does is
My
have
last 2 weeks
meetings.
have been back-to-back meetings.
But
I discovered that humans apparently sometimes have to go to the bathroom in between.
yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, meetings are. I would prefer an in-person meeting because you get to read body language and you get to see a person as they're communicating.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we're in Zoom meetings or Teams or Google Chat, and people don't even turn their cameras on, and that kind of frustrates me.
Yes.
That I can't see the people that. Yeah, exactly. But Khalid just turned his video off. If anyone who's listening to this, but yeah, and so where do I kind of would like to have something VR-ish, not for screens, having screens in front of me, but just having the ability to interact with someone in a more intimate way. I guess not intimate as in sexually. I just mean intimately as two humans meeting in person can have more of a connection.
Yeah, I figured you did mean sexually. That would be really weird in a work.
That would. And that's a whole different discussion on using technology, right? So
no, it is fascinating to see. There is a bunch of marketing BS sometimes with Meta, Microsoft, Google when they do these like, here's the future we imagine we can kind of facilitate. There's a bunch of infamous videos about what they think the future could be. And it's like they always kind of sell it like this is going to be next year, folks. Get ready.
I do love all those old Microsoft videos where like the Windows interface was everywhere. It was on like desktops and in your mirror in the bathroom, and it was on the back of the front seat in a taxi and all that stuff. But
on your partner's forehead, like edges everywhere. But
now that's what I truly need. I truly need cameras in my glasses and some AI telling me like who I'm talking to, because I'm horrible with names. So I would pay an ungodly amount of money to where I could walk up to someone and the AI would go, "That is Bob Smith."
Yeah, that's a good point, Chad. I mean, I think that's just
yeah. But we're kind of running out of time too. We don't want to take this too long. We want people to enjoy the end of 2023. What's your closing feelings or closing comments for this show?
Do you want the serious note or the non-serious note?
I don't care. It's the end of the year. We can all have a little nonsense, and
I'll start with the serious one.
Put the eggnog down, buddy.
Yeah,
it's not that time. All right.
No, okay. I'll start with a serious one. I think AI is definitely going to be something that is going to be in all we do in the future, at least the coming 2 or 3 years, whatever happens in between. So I do think it's important for all of us to dabble with it and see if we can up our prompting game and to tell the AI what we want from it and delegate some of our work to it. The non-serious one is that in terms of communication, maybe VR is just an intermediate step, and the next thing is neural implants, and we all just hook into the matrix.
Oh my god.
Maybe.
Yeah.
How about you, Clede?
Well, I'm not stepping up anytime soon to have a chip put in my brain. So there's my first thought, I think. No, I think augmented reality, like you hinted at, Chris, would be super cool. Like it'd be a cool future. But we've also all seen kind of Minority Report where there's just like constant ads everywhere plastered directly at you. So maybe I've become more dystopian in that sense. Like I think that's kind of where stuff's gonna go.
It will.
But to Martin's point, I do think AI marketing term AI is going to be valuable. I do think as technology improves, a lot of these models, large language models, generative AI, they'll come closer to your devices. They'll no longer need to be run on a remote server. So I think a lot of the privacy concerns that we've seen around AI will kind of become moot in some respect, because I think Apple is even looking at local models and has been applying them to like image optimizations and stuff like that, and so has Google. But yeah, I think AI right now is in a marketing hype cycle, but I do think it'll be valuable. How valuable will it be? I think for me, it'll probably be a notch above maybe what we've been used to with like ReSharper and Writer in terms of coding.
Yeah.
But I still think it'll be valuable in its own way. I just don't think it'll be like, I don't think the hype matches the reality right now.
I think it'll reach a higher positive than blockchain did. Remember that hype cycle?
I mean, that's a very low bar to set.
It won't meet the hype of the mobile, like what mobility and mobile computing gave to us. So I think it's kind of in between there. But so that's my closing thought too. But we're gonna wrap up. We don't want to take this too much longer. To everyone, Happy New Year. And we hope 2024 brings all the your wishes and great things happen to everyone in our audience and community. And I just want to say to Martin and Khalid, thank you. I do appreciate you guys, and this year's been great doing this podcast with you. So I just want to say thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We really appreciate it.
It goes in all directions. Yeah, thank you, Chris.
So remember, go down, subscribe on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to this as a podcast, as audio, subscribe to our podcast. We're on all the major platforms that you can aggregate all of the podcast content. And please go out to our website. It's broadcast.show is our URL.
Breakpoint.
Or broadcast. Breakpoint.show. And give us suggestions. Find us on social media. There's lots of ways that you can hit us up as a collective or individually. But yeah, we need ideas, and we would love to get more ideas from you, the listener or the watcher, for next year. So with that, I'm going to say
Happy New Year. Bye, everybody.
Yep. Happy New Year. See you, folks.